Okay. It's okay. I know what I have to do. I need to keep this party going. I'm taking one for the team.
Welcome to the Objective Secured podcast. My name's Mike.
And I'm Emma.
And this is episode 16, Taking One for the Team. We're going to do a wrap-up of the WATC that has just been completed a couple of days ago. We're still recovering, or at least our bodies are anyway.
Minds, emotions. It's going to take a while. There's a reason we only do one of these every couple of months. It takes that long to recover.
Look, we've mostly got our living room back. It did look like a tournament had exploded in our lounge room that night.
A couple of days,
on that Sunday night, yeah. But we have children, and they're on school holidays at the moment, which means that we have extra pairs of hands to help lug all the terrain boxes back out to the OBSEC dungeon.
It also means that it is school holidays at the moment, and we are stupidly recording this at 11 o'clock in the morning. So our kids are outside jumping on the trampoline, making a heck of a lot of noise. So if you can hear little people, or not so little people anymore, that's what they are.
Yeah, so we're going to persevere, though, and hopefully we won't get too many interruptions. And I'll edit out what I can, obviously. But we're going to talk off the back of the couple of posts on the website and the photo reel that Emma's put together and some of the wrap-up notes that we've made. And we're going to cover some of the cool armies and how some of those armies did, because there were a few unique army lists that were at the event.
Yeah.
And, kind of cover off on some of the experiences that we had, both Emma as a TO and then me as a player. So before we get into the main topic for today, though, we're going to quickly cover off non-related, or non-WATC related stuff, I suppose, which we've got some events coming up, but I'm really excited about some of the video stuff we're going to do. So we'll kick off with the future events. And yeah.
Before we start with the future events, I would just apologise. This podcast is coming out to you late. The intention is that podcasts will be released on Wednesday. Those of you who are in Australia know that Wednesday was Anzac Day here, and which is celebration of armed service personnel, past and present, and I guess future. And we made a decision not to put out the podcast until after Anzac Day.
Yeah, just a bit of a show of respect for past and present veterans, many of whom come to our events here in Perth, Western Australia. So just a thank you to all those servicemen who keep our borders secure and do everything in their power within the roles that they have within the armed services.
Yeah.
So
that's why we're late. Now, what were we talking about? Future events?
Future events.
Future events. Okay, so we've got our next event is our Mixed Gaming Day.
That's in June.
In June, 9th of June, which is also a celebration of our birthday.
Yeah, it's OBSEC's third birthday. Well, it's the third birthday in regards to the first post on the website.
On the blog, yeah.
Yeah. So, which is kind of cool. So we might even manage some cake or something for the day if you
No, we won't. Because I know that managing cake means me organising it.
Oh, we'll pick it up. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
Look, you overdid the cake for Craigs, for Gavin, president extraordinaire down there at the club, and we spent 2 days eating it afterwards. I'm sure the kids wouldn't mind. So
this is true. So at the moment we've got an AOS event happening, and we're talking about what we're going to do with a 40k event.
Just to try out the new FAQ?
Yeah, and we're tossing up the ideas of potentially doing a narrative 40k event, or whether to just do a standard kind of event because we do have the new FAQ out, or whether we try something a little bit different as kind of more of a fun, relaxed type of event. So
yeah.
We're still working that out, but it's coming up nice and quickly, so we better work it out nice and quickly.
Look, hopefully that players pack won't take too long to write, so it should be out.
Depends if we decide what we're going to do with it, doesn't it?
Well, both that and the AOS one should be out reasonably shortly in the next few days with any luck. So just keep your eyes out for that one. Tickets will be the usual. Head to the website and you'll find the links there.
Yeah.
And
Still trying to work out if there's any other events that we'll put on that day. So if you've got any other event that you'd like to see us run, let us know. We'll see what we can do.
Absolutely.
We've also got mixed doubles coming
You know
up.
what we could do on that weekend is a Shadespire mini event.
Oh, I'd thought of that and then forgot. Good plan.
Well, that also then ties
I'll write
in.
that down.
That also ties into an exciting announcement we do have off the back of Shadespire. Is we are going
doing that now, are we?
Well, we might as well. We're here and we're segueing.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to be doing the first Grand Clash for, as far as I'm aware, Australia in September at the show.
Yeah, so it's exciting. Southern Hemisphere Open, this is the second year. So last year, I guess, was our first year for Southern Hemisphere Open, and we actually had the global premiere of Shadespire.
Yeah, we had it nearly a month before anyone else in the world.
That's our kids banging about in the background and
and the dogs
arguing over having a drink. So it was very exciting to have Shadespire at Southern Hemisphere Open, and it's really exciting to have been invited by Games Workshop and Warhammer World to host the first Grand Clash that's happening in Australia. So we're really excited about that, and we can have up to 64 players for that event. We're hosting it over one day. And
probably the Sunday of show at this point.
And as we get more information around show and everything that's going with it, the website should go up by the end of the page for the website should go up by the end of this month, and we're going to have more and more information coming out. Just so keep your eye on the website, basically.
No, look, and the team at Warhammer World have been very sort of forthcoming and accommodating for us in a number of ways, which we'll share as we get more information from them.
Yeah,
so
exciting announcements to come.
Yeah, definitely. We're also going to be getting all the official Shadespire Grand Clash paraphernalia, so we're going to get the proper trophies from them.
The trophies are exciting.
We're going to get all the foil cards and all the exclusives for players and attendees.
Now, we have heard that those foil cards do have an awesome use. However, no one knows what that use is.
Yeah, apparently there's
apparently
there's a
come so you
special
can
card.
get one, and then when we find out what you can use them for, you'll be able to use it.
Well, it was funny, the conversation we had with James from Warhammer World. He was saying that there is a very unique card, or a couple of unique cards that certain people will be able to get on the day. It won't be for everyone, but it'll be for a couple of the winners, I assume, because we haven't seen the pack yet. The card has a unique use and purpose, but
within the game.
But he doesn't know what it is. And when the staff at the Warhammer World don't know what it is, we certainly don't after that. So
there's I guess, two options. The first one is they're really good at keeping secrets, and the second one is they haven't worked it out yet.
I reckon the second's just as likely as the first, to be honest. But so we're kind of very excited for that. So we can put something Shadespire-y on that day.
Yeah, that'd be exciting.
We've also then obviously got show in September coming up, and
mixed doubles
in between. No, it's July. Tail end of July, yeah.
Oh, we're stupid.
And then 40k Masters. We're also going to try and sneak in an AOS Masters at some point in that period of time, but
it has to be before the 40k Masters because
we're
going on holiday.
And also, we've got a couple of cool things that will be happening for both Masters events this year, but finding the hall for AOS is proving a little bit interesting, so we'll see what we can organise there. On the video topic thing, though, we're a little bit behind for the battle reports at the moment, which is a bit of a shame because between the WATC prep and everything else, something had to give because there's only two of us.
That's tricky with school holidays as well.
Yeah, but we're going to be doing some short videos over the next few days because I've just had some deliveries from some companies I've been looking forward to getting hold of. So the first set that I got was from a company called Anarchy.
I'm just going to say we paid for all of these. So
yeah, we did. These aren't sponsored.
Yeah.
This is out of our pockets.
Yeah. So just so that you don't think that we're just promoting stuff that we've been paid to do.
It's certainly not paid. If they want to give me stuff, by all means.
So
the first lot I bought from Anarchy Models, which is a UK company to my knowledge, because the website's .co.uk. So
that's a giveaway.
It's a fairly decent one. They're called the HD Stencil System now. I've used stencils from a couple of different companies with never perfect success. No,
actually, they've generally been quite rubbish.
Yeah. But these ones are an interesting one because they're not a stick-on. They're not like a vinyl one. They're more like a flexible plastic, like a polyurethane-style plastic that...
It's kind of like a cross between Tupperware and fly screen.
Yeah, almost. It's a really flexible... They're about an A5 so half a standard sheet of paper size, maybe a little bit smaller.
Yeah, I'd say probably close to A6, but let's not argue over paper size.
And they're designed, they're called the HS, so high-speed stencils. So the goal with them, when you watch the videos and you go looking, is you basically wrap it around the model, hit it with the airbrush, and then unwrap it straight away, and you get kind of a fading effect from whatever design you're using. So
it's not crisp and sharp and clean. It's more of a...
Well, in theory, the edges are where it bleeds off, but the internal detail should be still nice, neat lines. Now, I'm no expert at this, and I've done a couple of little test runs, which I'll take some photos of and put in the show notes. It's not a terrible, like, for a first go. They're pretty good. There's a fingerprint on it, though, when I tried to lift the stencil and it wasn't quite dry yet.
So I'm just looking at the ones that he's got now. The first time he did it, he didn't have the stencil on straight, so it just drove me insane.
The next one's much straighter.
Yeah, this is much better, so I'll post some photos so you know what I was complaining about.
But yeah, so they're an interesting item, and they're one that I wanted to experiment around with for some Harlequins, because that codex is somewhere very, very rapidly approaching, which is awesome.
We hope.
But the second part of this, which kind of ties in to why I got the stencil in the first place, was a product from Green Stuff World called Colour Shift Metallic Paints. Now, if you've ever seen any of the colour shifting cars, which was a fad...
For the early 2000s?
I want to say that it would have been one of the first couple of Fast and Furious movies,
yeah.
when those sorts of stencils and all that sort of stuff came into the public light, I suppose. These are acrylic water-based airbrush paints. Now, for some reason, there's two sets on the website. One of them sold out, and one of the paints is listed as no longer available, which I'm assuming is why that set is sold out, because there's a paint that's now no longer produced. So I've only got 11 of the 12 here. So I ordered the box set of that was still available, and then the other 5 paints loose. I ordered them both on the same day, and they both rocked up on the same day, and it was probably under 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was really quick.
And the colour shift paints came from Spain. So it was really interesting that I did get them. I wasn't expecting to get them until...
We got them faster from Europe than we did if we ordered something from eastern states of Australia.
Yeah, when I ordered the last lot of stencils I got from Combat Company here in Australia, who obviously are a supplier for the other company, and it took them longer to get me those stencils than it did to get these ones. So it's kind of exciting. They're a really interesting paint to play with, and I'm still experimenting, and again we'll get some photos of what's going on, and I'm going to do a test model up in the next couple of days on a Harlequin just to see what it does. But I'm really excited about some of the possibilities. We're going to do some stuff with brushes as well, because I know
see how it goes, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people interested to know will it work with a brush or not, because these you use them straight out of the pot. There's no thinning for them.
And they actually spray quite nicely straight out of the pot as well.
They really do. I've had no clogs, no nothing, and they clean up super easy.
Yeah, what were the paints that we were using the other day when we were doing the terrain with the...
The other ones were Vallejo airbrush paints.
Airbrush paints, which you're supposed to be able to use straight out of the pot.
And some of them work really well, and others really don't.
We really had quite a few bits where it was quite dodgy, and we had to stop and clean it all out.
Well, the one that we had the biggest problem with was the Vallejo black surface primer, which I thinned and still ended up with clogs and all sorts of problems with it. By the end of it,
cleaning the airbrush than we did actually airbrushing with it.
Yeah, I mean by the end of it, we kind of had a decent sort of.
We knew how much Windex to add to the paint. We'd got the ratio right.
But yeah, these colour shift ones work. I literally shook them for a couple of minutes. They've all got a little ball bearing in them, and they're a dropper bottle as well, which is really cool. So
I quite like the dropper bottles. I find it great that you can actually write down that you had 3 drops of this paint, 2 drops of that paint, and 4 drops of that paint to create this particular colour. Yeah, which is difficult to do with when you're kind of getting a brush full and adding half a brush full and.
Yeah, I mean these dropper bottles as well, because you are dealing with a metallic pigment in a floating in either. It looks like half of them are clear and half of them have a coloured liquid that they float in.
Yeah.
So you obviously want to have that dropper bottle so that you can get a good shake out of it and you get a consistent mix, because if you let it settle in a pot and then don't shake the hell out of it and then try and mix it'd result in all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they're really cool. I mean, I've seen a couple of videos where they say, you need to do like half a dozen sprays over the top of the black undercoat. I did one.
One spray looks
and
really awesome.
the ones look really good, so I'm keen to actually put multiple coats of the same colour over one model and see how vibrant it actually becomes.
Yeah.
There's also the question mark of whether I do it over gloss or not, because I've seen some people say it has to go over gloss. I've done it over matte black, and it works just fine.
Didn't look too crash hot straight over white, but when you've mixed it with, so you've gone the straight over the white, then used a stencil to do,
I figured I'd ruin that test colour by then, so...
No, but it looked really cool. So what he did, he had white undercoat, then he used the colour shift paint over the top of that, which did not look brilliant. Then he used the stencil over that to put a diamond checker over it, and then went over the top of the whole thing with a colour shift paint again. And it's an awesome effect. I really like it.
Well, the pearlescent, the clear-based ones, actually, I did over a Corax white undercoat with a blue colour shift paint, and it's a clear-based colour shift, so it actually ends up as like a white pearlescent finish.
Yeah, it's really subtle.
Which you can, as it moves in the light, you can definitely see it. But I'd be interested to see whether I have to highlight the white or whether I have to recess shade it and stuff, and how much tonal variation I can get in that pearl by doing more work at the front end, because it feels like what you want to do is, and testing will tell, I suppose, but it feels like what you want to do is put all the base colours on, do all the edge highlights, do all the pin washing and recess shading, and maybe even pre-shading with the airbrush, and then put this stuff on, and I think you'll get a lot of tonal range with it. But it's still early days yet, and I've only got so many free lurking Harlequins, although I did find a bunch of old metal Harlequins that might go under the chopping block as well for the sake of testing. So really excited to play about with those, though. So if you've got any experiences or you want to share any models that you've done with these colour shift paints, or you've used these stencils before, by all means leave a comment either on the Facebook page or on the post or wherever you want to do it, and be keen to hear about your experiences with these colours and stencils. But why don't we have a quick break? We'll get stuck into the topic about some of these crazy lists and some of the results, and also some of the data that we've been able to dig out of all the answers that we got from players on the day. Right, so we're going to look at some of the data that we've gathered from WATC and answer some of the questions that we've had from players and from spectators from around the world. We've actually had quite a bit of interest. We've shared some of this data as well with some of the guys in America at the ITC, and it's been a good kick-off point to start deciding some of our future events, points values and timings and that sort of stuff as well. So it was really good to have a lot of the captains go ahead and give us that data. We did have a few rounds where the results maybe weren't as complete as they should have been. Round 4 in particular was less recorded data than the other rounds, but we still had 60 games around, so we had 240 games happen over the day, and we probably had 90% of the data recorded correctly, which is great because it means that we kind of have a benchmark now for what we can expect in terms of points values versus time versus completed rounds and so on.
So the data that we requested the win-loss teams.
Obviously, and their individual points values as well.
The points values for each of those games. And then we also asked for the captains to record how many battle rounds they had per game as well.
Completed battle rounds
per game. Yeah.
And then also whether the game ended naturally, yes or no. So by ended naturally, we mean, did you get called on time? If so, that's a no. If you finished 5 turns and the game ends because you didn't roll for turn, you failed the roll for turn 6, that's a natural end. If you finished all 7 turns and then the game ends, that's a natural end. Or if you
there's
table
no models left on the table,
if you table your opponent, that's a natural end as well. So we're only interested in basically, was time stopping games, or was the game reaching a natural conclusion one way or the other? So most interestingly, though, with that sort of data is we also were able to then average the amount of rounds that each player had, and we're also able to average the rounds per tournament round on top of that. Mm-hmm. And what was really interesting is that those numbers don't really move about too much.
No.
So for the end of round 1, the average amount of battle rounds played at 1,500 points for a 2 to 2.25 hour game, depending on obviously the way the matchup process was done by the captains, was 3.7 completed battle rounds.
So round 1 was a completely random draw.
Yep.
So we used random.org and we, basically plugged in 20 names and we just randomly allocated them to pairs. And so there was no matching with that based on,
ability
ranking
or
or
anything. Yeah.
So, 3.76 reoccurring rounds were finished in that round one.
Yeah. So then we hit the Swiss matchups for round 2. So we now are actually pairing winners with winners, or in the event that we've got an odd number of winners to losers, and we did have a situation where there were some draws for the rounds as well. We ended up counting back on battle points for the team. So in round 2, the average amount of battle rounds completed for tournament round 2 were 3.716 recurring.
So a slight difference. So 3.76 reoccurring to 3.716 reoccurring.
Yeah, so...
Very slight. I'm sure that would not be statistically significant if I could be bothered working out the p-values and all of those things.
Now, what's interesting for me is in between rounds 2 and 3, we had lunch.
Yeah.
And
so, also, in between round 1 and 2, the bar opened.
Yes.
So we did drop
Just a
slightly.
tiny bit. Just a tiny bit.
As the beer was introduced.
Then we had lunch. And we kicked off the second round of Swiss pairings for round 3.
So we had a 40-minute break and food.
And we jumped to 3.916 recurring battle rounds completed for round 3. Now, round 3 was always going to be a pointy end of the event because of the 20 teams. Obviously, the way it scales down means that you are now matching top teams with top teams. And we were expecting that number to drop, and it hasn't. It actually went up. So whether that's all the carbs and protein and all the rest of it kicking in, and no doubt the caffeine as well, and give everyone a boost for round 3, I don't know.
I think some of our players are used to drinking and playing, so perhaps by then
they'd warmed up.
Yeah.
And then going into battle round 4, we actually had it drop off, and I'm assuming this is purely an endurance.
Fatigue.
Yeah, 3.516 battle rounds completed.
It was actually interesting as an observer, watching around, as round 4 started, people were still was still a little bit of excitement there. And probably 45 minutes into round 4, the energy completely bottomed out. And then when there were about 45 minutes left of round 4, it started to amp up again. And as we got closer and closer to the end, the energy started going up and up again. So it was quite interesting to watch that.
Well, I should also point out for round 4 that number is a little bit misleading because it was also the round we got the least data from. I think we're missing about 12 data points.
Yeah.
So if we got those 12 data points,
would it have changed?
I have no doubt it probably would have crept back up a little bit. Yeah. But it means that over the course of the day, out of 240 games, we had an average of 3.73 battle rounds completed per game.
So the reason that we can fairly confidently say that I'm going to scrap that. Never mind.
So I don't know where that thought was going, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
We can safely say that 2 hours at 1,500 points, we're expecting a minimum of 3, but closer to 4 battle rounds to be completed at 1,500 points. Now, what was really interesting about this is we were also then obviously able to then work that back by player.
Yes.
To get that turn info. And it meant that we could compare how many points they scored compared to how many rounds they averaged completing, comparing to whether they finished the games naturally or not. And it gave us some interesting data as well.
Now, we haven't actually worked out a number, like model count versus how many battle turns they got in. But we obviously do know the standout ones. So we know Dom had 3 models. We know that Harry had 320 models. Yeah,
so there were some of those ones, the outliers that we knew. And obviously the game is a 2-sided game, so you're going to have 2 players impacting that time.
Yeah, so in one of Harry's games, he was playing against Steve. And
with about 14 or 15 models.
16 models. So, as you said, there is going to be that difference. If we'd had Harry playing against Owen with his...
Well, he didn't have that many orcs for this event, but he did have a few. But regardless, obviously model counts are going to affect things. You assume that model counts are going to affect the way games play out. But
we've actually had a suggestion from one of the team captains, Steve, who has suggested that we ask all of the team captains to do the model count for all of the lists in their team, and then we'll have that data that we'll be able to add to this as well.
Yeah, it means that we can start comparing model count versus turns played, and look, there is some gaps in the data, so there are some slightly misleading numbers. But
and we might actually go back to some of those players and see whether or not they can remember how many turns they played and see if we can fill in some of the gaps as well.
Yeah. So what was most interesting for me, though, was some of the individual numbers. So we had 20 players that reported that they completed all 4 of their games naturally out of 120.
Yeah.
So 1/6 of the field were finishing their games every time naturally. And it was just shy of, it was like 53, I think it was.
54.
54 players on average finished their games.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions with that. The 54 players who completed it on average, what did you count as average?
So obviously we had recorded yeses and nos.
Yes.
Anything that I didn't have a data point was listed as a unknown.
Yeah.
And then I literally went through and went, oh, look, they've got 3 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, so 3 or more is considered.
Well, if I had a 2,
usually.
if I had a 2, an unknown, and a no, that would still class as a yes.
Okay.
So the data is a little bit higher than I'm actually assuming it was because of that discrepancy. If I took out all the maybes, I suggest that data might change slightly.
Okay, and next question: the 20 players who finished all of their games, was there anything like? Did they usually finish towards the top of the pack for the event overall? Were they in the middle of the pack, at the bottom? Were they spread all over?
Yeah,
was there any pattern there?
No, there definitely wasn't any pattern there.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
There was only one player who averaged 6 rounds per 6 completed battle rounds per tournament round. Mm-hmm. 2 of them went to turn 6, 1 went to turn 7, and 1 went to turn 5, and all 4 of them naturally finished.
Yeah.
And then we had a bunch of them on 5.75, 5.25, and 5. Another 7, actually. So we had 8 people who averaged at least 5 turns. And then the 4s, from 4 to 4.75 made up another 22. And then we had a bunch that obviously then sat in the 3s and, by that point we're halfway through the pack. What was most interesting, though, was some of the ones who did make it into the 3s that you wouldn't actually think would happen. So we had the Grot army, the Gretchen army. I'm just going to try and make sure I've got it right. I believe he was 3.75.
3.75, yeah, he was.
Rounds completed, although I can't see him now in the list. So I'm just going to double check that and make sure I can find it. So we had some small armies. Here we go. So yeah, 3.75 turns for that Grot army, 320 Gretchen and a couple of characters, and he still managed nearly 4 full battle rounds in a 2-hour time frame, which is absolutely amazing. We had guys like Dom, who was fielding 3 Tesseract Vaults. He averaged nearly 5 turns a game. Not really surprising, given there's 3 of them, but they do have a lot of dice to roll.
Well, it's 3.75 compared to 4.75. So when you're looking at the difference between 3 models and 320 models, I'm not sure that you could say that having one extra battle turn is one extra battle round per round is statistically significant for that bigger difference in model count.
But I suppose when you look at what those 2 armies did differently, Dom's army rolled 9 Satan powers and 60 shooting shots per turn.
Yeah.
Whereas I suspect Harry probably didn't fire a shot in most games.
So his was just around actually moving
and absorbing space. So they do different things on the table. We had...
Somebody actually sent me an awesome photo of Harry packing up his models. I'll see whether or not I can work out how to download it and share it. But basically, he's literally just grabbing handfuls of them and chucking them in a carrier bag.
Yeah, he wasn't happy with...
Oh, no, this was before the event.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He did say he didn't really want to play that army again, but we might convince him to come out for one last hurrah with it, just so we can do something a bit fancy against Owen and his orcs. Yeah. See how many we can put on the table. Look, we had Space Marines at the top there with the most turns played, and then we had AdMech 2 and 3. And then it kind of mixes and matches as we get further down the list, where we there's no sort of consistency in army builds either. They're kind of all over the show. And right down the tail end... in terms of average rounds, it starts getting interesting because some of the armies that you find at the bottom of the pile, like really low model count Tau armies, like battlesuit style armies, are in there with one of the guys, for example, he was running 6 Ghost Keels because this was used pre pre-FAQ,
Pre-FAQ.
so he could run 6. He only averaged 2.75 turns. So there doesn't seem to be any consistency with regards to model count that you can say, yes, this is definitely a factor. What's also interesting is that there are very experienced players at the bottom and very experienced players at the top.
At the top, yeah.
So, there's no real consistency in regards to completed turns in that regard. I mean, one of the guys on my team, very, very experienced player, multiple tournament winner, only averaged...
And playing for multiple decades.
at least one that I'm aware of, but...
Yeah, well, he did have a big break in the middle. So.
Yeah. He only averaged 3 battle rounds a game.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting one where...
But as we've said before, there's 2 players in every game.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm not sure. Obviously, he's a very experienced player, and he was playing at the playing at the top end of the tables. So we expect that he was playing against other experienced players.
yeah,
Apart
exactly.
from round 1.
So, yeah, there's some interesting data there. Whether it actually highlights anything at the moment, I'm still not sure about, because it feels like at 2 hours and 1,500 points, we needed another half hour per game. But we typically do 2 hours, 45 minutes for a 2,000 point game.
Yeah.
And off the back of this data, I can't help but think that
Well, when you
really
have
that
many of
needs to
those-
be like at least 3 hours. And to creep it up any higher than 1850 or maybe 2,000, you're starting to look at over 3 hour games to make them finish. The problem is that...
Just so you know, I am not doing 15 hours of actual game day. It is... I mean, we did probably a 19-hour day on Sunday. If we played for 15 hours instead of just for 10 hours, nah,
Yeah.
not doing it. I'm out. Find another TO.
But it's one that there's clearly a correlation between time used and points value. The problem is that there are armies that will finish the game in, and we saw it at Masters last year, where we had guys rocked up at 2250 points with 5 or 6 models, because they write these skewy lists that are still completely legal under the new FAQ, but will essentially only have a dozen models, and it's they're not going to need 3 hours to play their games in theory. It's going to be decided one way or another fairly rapidly.
But as we've seen, model count doesn't necessarily make a difference.
Exactly. So the correlation there's still a bit... The jury's out on that one, I guess. But what was really positive, though, is that we had, on average, nearly half the field completing games.
Yeah.
Naturally, I should say.
Well, so we had 54 players usually completing their games to a natural end, and 19 players were 50-50. So, if you add that, you've got 73 players there who are completing 2 games or more. That is more than half the field.
Yeah. So that was a really positive piece of information that we did receive. So we're in the right sort of ballpark. We just need to kind of tune it a little bit more. And unfortunately, part of the issue we had with WATC was the amount of time we could actually be in the venue. Really limited how many turns, or how many minutes we could allow per battle, how many minutes we could allow per tournament round compared to what we might actually want. I mean, if we tried to squeeze it out to 2.5 hours per battle per tournament round, then all of a sudden you're starting to talk about, plus the matchup process as well, and set up and pack up. It's a
really
we're not out of there
long day.
before 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and instead of 9 o'clock when we managed it. So, it is you're walking that line of balancing people's lives, ours included, with getting a result.
But I wonder from a player's perspective how daunting it would be to look at a player's... I mean, and I will admit that quite a few players don't read the player's pack, so they probably wouldn't even notice. But if you looked at a player's pack and saw that your check-in was 8 a.m. and your last game wasn't due to finish until 9 p.m., how many players would look at that and go, you have got to be kidding. There's no way I can concentrate for that length of time.
Well, it's a hard one. I remember the very first tournament that was run in Perth that I played in was 4 games on day 1.
Yeah, 4 games day 1 and 3 games day 2.
And that was that 4th game just about killed me that day. And I think that was...
You were a lot younger then as well.
I know. But we didn't finish that last game until about 7:30 or 8 o'clock that night. But there was no pack-up, of course, because it was a 2-day tournament. So,
But it's still an hour drive home.
Yeah, look, as TOs, we do have some, I suppose, responsibility to try and take that into account for people so that they're not, doing something crazy and ending up hurt or worse.
Well, especially because, again, sweeping generalisation for players, but we do have a significant number of them who are up till very early hours of the morning painting their models because despite knowing that the event's been coming for 12 months, they've left it until 6 hours before the event to, finish off the 3 units that they've still got to do, but it's okay because it's only 3 units. And they've just still got to build those 2 characters and, those kinds of things. So, sometimes, but we're getting up at 4 a.m. to pack the trailer as players are going to bed.
Yeah.
They're getting in 2 or 3 hours before coming to an event.
Well, there were a couple of guys who basically just didn't go to bed. They got up Friday morning.
We really do not advocate that.
They got up Friday morning, went to work, got home, started painting, and then realised that by the time they went to bed, they'd just be getting straight back up again to drive. So
that's Friday, and then our event wasn't until Sunday.
Oh, sorry, Saturday. I meant they were literally just getting up the day before and then not going to bed.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act to try and get good results, to try and get good data, and to try and create an environment where that everyone enjoys themselves with, how much time we can allow and how much time we think is reasonable for players to spend in the whole process. Because while the tournament might be 8 hours, there's everything around that, and it really does become a 12-hour day for a player. Like even just the average player is probably a 12-hour day by the time they get up in the morning, get to the event, play the games, and get home again. It's probably a good 12 hours.
One of the things that we didn't ask players is how they felt about not finishing those games. Would they have preferred to have additional time to finish the games, or did they think, you know what, it's okay that I'm cutting this short because I've got to get 4 games in today?
I think it's a funny one. Like my first game, we only finished 4 turns.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular game, I'll admit I started late because I was helping out with with the Youngbloods team doing their matchups because they were kind of still trying to wrap their heads around it. So by the time I got to the table, we'd probably lost 15 minutes of the round. So we got 4 full battle rounds in within the just 1 hour and 3/4, maybe a little bit less. And at the end of turn 4, even though we didn't naturally finish the game, we both knew what the result was going to be because his turn 5 would have taken all of 5 minutes, and then I would have likely tabled him immediately following that. So ending at turn 4, and it was already a max win at that point anyway, and him killing a model or 2 wouldn't have changed that result, means that the natural conclusion was essentially the conclusion we got. So it's hard to say, if you only got 3 turns in, but you've only got 2 models left at the end of turn 3 and you run out of time, the natural conclusion doesn't change. If anything, because of the way the tournament scored, you might actually end up being better off.
Yeah.
By being still sort of on the table at turn 3 and then running out of time. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer to it. So,
no, neither do I. I'm just saying, are we talking about potentially changing the way that we're running events, but is it actually broken? Are we trying to fix something that isn't actually broken?
Look, in an ideal world, you'd have every game go to completion.
Yeah, but when you're looking at half the event attendees are actually finishing it, what happens for those 60 players that are sitting around? How long do they have to wait for the other players to finish?
Yeah.
So it's a real balancing act, and so for people who haven't organised a tournament, this is all the kind of stuff that we're thinking about all the time. There is so much more that goes into organising a tournament than rocking up on a day, whacking some tables out and going, go for it, guys, have fun. Like, there's so much that's in the thought process behind these things.
Look, I certainly think that we have to take that stuff into consideration these days because of the attendees, the volume that you get. If you've got 16 or 20 players rocking up, you can afford to be a bit more blasé about it because obviously the variation, if you have 50% of your players finishing games at a 120 player count, that's 60 players. If those same 60 players are the pool of players that are coming to your 20-player tournament, you might be turning around and saying, well, 100% of my players are finishing their games.
Yeah.
So there's so many variables there, and then as you increase the player count, these variables just get wider and wider. So you do have to start taking them into consideration. But look, why don't we start talking about some of the results in terms of the armies and some of the interesting ones. I want to start with the only player to get a perfect score for the day. 80 out of 80 possible points, 4 for 4. Averaged 4.25 games, 4.25 battle rounds per game. And
he got in an extra quarter of a game.
and on average completed all of his games. And that is...
and he's also one of the 3 players to walk away with 3 for 3 wins for all of our WATC events.
His name is Tom White. Tom played...
Congratulations, Tom.
Yeah, he played Inari, Craft World Eldar Inari. In terms of the actual results for Tom, when you actually look through the numbers, he had... he was one of the 20 players who had all 4 games complete naturally. 3 of them turned 4, 1 of them turned 5, which means he's tabled 3 people and then obviously either had a timeout or tabled the last one on turn 5. So yeah, look, congratulations to Tom for that. He's the only... I don't think anyone else has ever scored a perfect finish for any of the WATCs. I'd have to go back and look, but 80 out of 80, all games completed, all games naturally. Like, it's literally a perfect tournament in terms of attendance.
I was talking to one of the attendees and I was asking him how his game was going. He's like, oh yeah, I've won these games, won 2 and lost 2. But one was against Tom White, so that doesn't count.
So, that was really good to see. It's always nice to see someone pick that up. So, second overall in terms of the individual rankings was another one on the same team. Another veteran of the tournament circuit was Matt Aird. Matt with his Star Wars-themed Guard Army. He ended up with 76 points out of a possible 80. So, just behind Tom by a fraction. And then third place was Sebastian Cool from the Frio First and Only team with his Sisters of Battle.
Wow, that's really cool.
Which was really cool to see. It's certainly an army that I think would have taken a few people by surprise. Canoness Celestine, Arco-Flagellants, Dominions, Seraphim, Battle Sisters, Immolators, Repressors. If you've never seen a Sisters of Battle Repressor on the table, that'll scare the hell out of you when it actually starts doing what it does. So that was pretty cool to see, with him only 1 point behind Matt on 75. And then we trickle down... Tim Melrose, honourable mention, in 4th with his Tyranids on 73. John Gill on 72, again with Tyranids. And
John Gill drove all the way up from Albany for the event, so we really appreciate all the people who drove, and travelled distances to get to the event. So that's really awesome.
Yeah. So out of those top 5, they averaged out at about 4 battle rounds a game, and 3 of the 5 of them completed their games each round. So the top end of the field, fairly closely matched. I'm not going to talk about the bottom end of the field because I don't think that's necessarily...
I would actually like... So this is what I was asking you before, and perhaps I didn't ask my question clearly. So I was asking, with the... Scroll back up again. With those, the people who were naturally ending their games, were they in the top?
Well, like I say, the ones that are flagged would be on average completing their games. So 3 of the 5 of them on average completed their games.
Okay.
So...
And what about the bottom ones? Were they on average completing their games or not?
So bottom 5, without using names or anything, they averaged 4.35 battle rounds a game, and 4 of the 5 of them on average completed their game naturally, and 1 of them was 50-50.
Awesome.
So there doesn't seem to be any sort of correlation in that regard. Maybe they're getting tabled.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. I was more thinking that... so there were 2 kind of hypotheses with whether people were finishing games. The first one was that if people are newer to the game or perhaps less experienced, then they're less likely to finish their games because they're checking rules and they're going through and finding out, or they're uncertain with what they need to do or where they can move, that kind of thing. The flip side to that hypothesis is that generally, the newer you are to the game, the less strategy you're putting into it. It's just about, I know how to play this one particular way, and diving in and just doing it. And so moving through that system really relatively quickly because you're not thinking about the different strategies that you could employ. The other hypothesis is that the stronger players are less likely to finish games because they're spending so much time thinking about the alternative strategies that they could employ and how they could give you a better outcome and a better result.
Yeah.
Neither of those hypotheses seems to have been accurate.
No, look, I mean, we've got a couple of names here that, again, I won't share them because they are down the bottom end and I don't want to embarrass anyone.
No. Somebody has to come last.
Yeah.
There's nothing embarrassing about that. People should be acknowledged and celebrated for turning up and for finishing in the bottom end of the event with a smile on their face.
That is true. I'm still not going to name them.
No, don't name them. But I'm just saying, nobody should feel embarrassed about not coming in the top 5.
But if you actually look at some of the names that we have here that are attendees of our events on a semi-regular or regular basis, there's 5 of them ranked 90th through to 120 who, on average, did not complete their games. On average, probably managed... I'll do the average very quickly here. They're going to have averaged less than 3 turns around, I would suspect.
Oh, there's a couple of 4s there.
Average is 3 battle rounds a game. So these are people who know their stuff, who you would expect them to be completing games, and they haven't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any correlation there. So, well, you know,
just out of interest, on average, how did the young bloods go?
So Team Youngbloods. Now,
so the young bloods, we had 6. Did we have 6 attendees come to?
Yep, we had 6.
6 attendees came to our young bloods event, which was in January. So these are guys. They were all boys. They were under the age of
16.
Well, they were under the age of 16. So the oldest, I think, is 15, and the youngest was 9
or 10. Yeah,
sorry, can't remember. So yeah, really, really lovely guys, and they decided to put together a team to come to WATC.
And just stop and think about that for a second for those adults out there. Can you imagine? And it's going to sound really crass, but the size of the brass balls these kids have,
to come walk into that room,
into that 120 player tournament and play full-grown adults who are old enough to be, in some cases, their grandparents.
Yep.
And
who have all generally been playing longer than these kids have been alive.
Yeah, like there is a level of I have to take my hat off to them to have the guts to go into that room and play. Either
that, or they're so young that they haven't got to a point of being intimidated by. They haven't hit that point yet.
So these kids averaged just shy of 4 battle rounds. Yeah. It's actually higher than the average across the event.
Yeah, they did well.
And 4 of the 6 of them completed their games on average, with one of them 50-50 and one of them less likely to complete all 4 games. So, in terms of their result, I think they should be pretty pleased with themselves. There was one guy there with 3 wins, one with 2 wins and a minor loss, and then a couple others that were, ties and stuff like that. So not one of them ended up with no points. Not one of them ended up at the bottom of the field on battle points as well.
No, that's true. So although the Youngbloods team did take out the wooden spoon,
yep,
their players individually,
not one of them was the bottom.
No.
Yeah, so hats off to them. That was pretty impressive from them.
Yeah.
So let's have a quick look at the some of the lists, though, because I know there were some people interested in how some of these lists actually did. And I've also got a spreadsheet that I had open. Yeah, of course. That we were using, and we kind of highlighted some of the lists that we didn't want to play. Now, I'm just going to bring it up here. It is sadly in Facebook, so it's going to probably ping a million times at me. But we'll try and make that quick for everyone. So, this was actually put together by Matt Ed on our team, and he basically had a...
Sorry, I'm just looking at the spreadsheet. There's a column in it, the first column, how scary is it? And it's a number ranking.
Now, to clarify what that number ranking actually is, that is the combined total score of all 6 of our team that we expected to get from that list.
Okay.
So, number 1 on our list was actually a list written by one of the Armidale Hooligans, Evan Eakin. And the total combined score, if each one of us played it one after another, our expected score was 27 points out of a possible 120.
Now, you didn't play against...
No, we didn't play it.
So that was in the team from Adelaide with Love?
Yes. So that was probably... And I'm sure that we were probably overly zealous with some of these Eldar lists, because the first 3 are all Eldar.
The first 3 are Eldar.
But it was one that we all kind of went, ooh, that's not nice. So none of us really wanted to play it. Number 2 was a list by Matt Bell, again, Eldar. And you can see a pattern here. The first one was 12 Reapers and 3 Hemlocks. The second one is 14 Reapers and 2 Hemlocks.
Yeah.
The third one was Jason Chow, another Eldar list. This time was Dark Reapers and Wave Serpents. There's a pattern here. Then we had John Gill's Tyranids with 5 Flying Hive Tyrants and Morlocks. And then the rounding out the top 5 was the 320 Gretchen and 2 Weird Boys.
So interesting, Jason Chow... Oh, sorry, John Gill was one of the top 5 players listed, I believe.
Yeah, he was. So we were looking at this not in regards to the players, we were looking at this in regards to the lists.
Yeah, I understand that.
So it was interesting to go through these and rank them that way. And then we also did a little column here which included an FAQ impact. So... the FAQ impact basically references what happens to the list in the future. Yeah, so the FAQ impact basically means for future events, are these lists viable? What happens to them? So the first 3 on the list are listed as more expensive because they did all feature Dark Reapers and the Dark Reapers went up in points. So instantly those lists essentially become unplayable.
In this particular points level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We also then hit for the 4th ranked one that we had here, which was a Tyranid one. It becomes unplayable because it did have 5 Flying Hive Tyrants. So we listed that as nerfed because essentially you can't play it anymore.
Yeah.
And that happens for, I think, all the Tyranid lists. Alan's and Tim Melrose are both listed there. The fun one, though, was Dom Malavassi's triple Tesseract Vault. The total combined score was 56 out of 120.
And the comment on that is, lol.
Yeah. I actually got to play that list in round 4.
And you lost.
I did. I won the primary and the secondary and then lost the tertiary, which was enough to swing it.
As much as I'm teasing you about losing, I will give you did make him work for that win. And I came over, I don't know how far we were into the game, and I thought you were going to be wiped out really quickly and then came back probably 45 minutes, an hour later. I'm like, you're still playing. Like, how do you still have models left?
Still managed the 13-7.
I'm hiding.
Still managed the 13-7 tactically.
Yeah, not bad.
Dom played that really well. I worked it out. I fired 52 short-range fusion blaster shots at one of those vaults. Mathematically speaking, it dies twice over. It still had 2 wounds left at the end of the game. So frustrating. But no, so when we started going through these as a team, we were kind of going, okay, well, what don't we want to play, and who basically gets to suck that up? So with that, when I actually got to play the Tesseracts, it was because no one else wanted to.
Yeah.
So I got to play it, and it was always going to be a swingy game where I would either do really well or really badly, and it was really badly. So in the end, we still won the round, but I like to think my 7 points contributed something to that.
How many did you win the round by?
I have no idea.
Okay.
So, we basically went through this entire sheet, and after a sort of... Once we hit sort of the rank 40s, we stopped looking too much at what the FAQ did to them.
Yeah.
Partly because, without sounding horrible, we got to a point where those lists we were expecting to beat on average. So we kind of stopped paying as much attention to them, because if they were made worse in the FAQ, then it didn't matter. If they were illegal in the FAQ, it didn't matter. And if they got better, then we'd obviously need to reassess it, but it wasn't relevant for this event.
I was going to say, in all honesty, that column doesn't really matter anyway, because for this event, it wasn't relevant.
No, but from a data gathering point of view, for other team events in the future, it's another piece of information to have. So it was interesting to see Matt's take on it as well. So we ranked them on a scale of 1 to 120, with 1 being, oh my god, no, and 120 being, please let me play them. And I think we only had 1 at 120.
You didn't get to play it?
No, we didn't get to play it. One of our guys did, because we actually played that team round 1.
Okay.
And we did get 20 points out of it. So that was nice. But it just goes to show how much prep some teams can put in it when you've got, like, this is, I think, spreadsheet number 3 that we ended up with. We had 2 others running at one point there as well.
How much work did you put into
7
this
minutes.
spreadsheet? Yeah, that's what I thought.
7 minutes. They asked me to rank every team, how many points I would get per player. There are 114 names on that list. It took me 7 minutes to fill that sheet in. Mm-hmm. I still did all right.
Alrighty.
So it was a really interesting day as a player. I played 4 games. I played Imperial Guard round 1. I played Imperial Guard round 2. I played Blood Angels round 3, and I played Necrons round 4.
So
A win, loss.
And I know, so the last 2 games you were thrown under a bus.
Certainly the third game was definitely, okay, we just, like, here you go, just do what you can, Mike. And it was a drop Blood Angels army, Death Company, Sanguinary Guard, Smash Hammer, Captain, Lamatis, Mephiston. I got really lucky with Mike when he went to charge one of my characters, and I overwatched it, Mephiston to death with 2 fusion blasters, which was great. And that was the only successful charge roll that Mike actually made, because he then failed all 4 other charge rolls from Deep Strike with rerolls and with stratagems and all the rest of it. And it basically let me control the game from that point onwards. He did get a few charges off, but when you combine the -1 to hit that I had on my stealth teams and my ghost kills from the stealth drones, as well as shield generators, it's very hard to kill me in combat, which is where he does all his work. And I suppose in retrospect, I marked that one as a please don't let me play it.
Because on paper you should have lost.
And, well, the more I've thought about it since that game, and at the time...
Well, certainly what he was telling me during the game.
Yeah, and
at the beginning of the game, I'm going to be hammered.
Yeah, and Mike and I generally agreed on that principle, and it wasn't until the game actually got underway and he made his first charge in turn 2 that I realised, actually, you know what? It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be because of those defensive measures that I had in the army. So that went to turn 5 when I tabled Mike. And game 1 was my other max win against the Imperial Guard, which only went to turn 4, like I said earlier, but turn 5 wouldn't have changed that. Game 4 against the Tesseract Vaults was turn 5 natural end with a 13-7 loss, because I had 2 of the 5 objectives and he had none. I had more Maelstrom cards. Mm-hmm. I was up. I think I was up about 7 points. Mm-hmm. But because I didn't get a single kill, because he only had 3 Tesseract Vaults, and the 2 cards that I had in my hand from Maelstrom would have given me 2d3 on top of the 1 for killing the damn thing, the 7-point swing in his favour would have been brought back to, essentially close to nothing or nothing. So it was a bit frustrating that I didn't kill 1. But, it's a dice game.
Yeah.
So I had 4 fun games, and... I think the Tau army that I have, I think I'd still field it again, and I think I'd get better with it as I played more with it.
That's interesting because...
But I'm not going to.
Yeah, if you've listened to the podcast or Facebook Lives, then you know that Mike had a bit of an accident with his Tau and dropped them and broke them and cried.
I didn't drop them, the table dropped them.
Well, and cried lots about that, and so... When that happened, that was kind of like the turning point of, no, don't want to do it anymore. I've had enough.
Yeah.
And, so getting that army finished for the event was a real tough slog. And so, you pretty much went, I don't even want to think about Tau anymore. I'm going back to my Eldar.
Yep. So they're not finished. They're tabletop standard, and even then they're not finished tabletop in my mind. So I probably will at least go back and finish off the red.
You won't.
No, I'll get them all to the same standard, and that'll probably
won't.
be it. Not now. I'm playing with Harlequins.
Once he finishes for a tournament, that's it. He very rarely goes back and does anything to them unless they're going out to another event. And since these ones aren't, nothing's going to happen.
No, they're going to go on the YouTube channel at some point. I'll have to put them on there and have a game with them. So I will have to finish them.
Yeah, right.
But look, as a player, I have to give congratulations to our team captain Ghislaine Platel, who, if you've seen the YouTube channel, we played our first game on the YouTube channel, and our first game of the YouTube channel for 2018 was with her. She did a great job captaining the team. She did all the work and whatnot in the lead up to. Honourable mention to Tom White, who was her vice captain for the day and helped her with matchups and scoring and all the rest of it.
And we have to offer congratulations to our winning team, which was the WA Underdogs. So as Mike said, that was captained by Ghislaine Platel, and then Tom was the vice captain, Matt Aird, Mike Bask, Pete Platel and Nick Small.
Yeah.
And this was Nick's first game back in Australia. He hasn't been back very long.
No, he's been in Belgium the last couple of years. And it's also the 3rd year consecutively that Tom, Pete and myself have won the event.
Yes.
So we've already all agreed that we're going to separate for 2019.
Oh.
So only one of us gets to have the 4 in a row if we manage it. So that'll be kind of cool to break up the band. There's no Yoko, though. So maybe I'm too old or the listeners are too young to get that reference. We'll see. Then we had Style Boys from Freo, led by store manager Mitch Byrne, take out second place. We played them in the final. We were the only 2 teams on 3 wins going into the final round.
And there was 7 points separating them overall. So there was a very distinct possibility that if there was a draw, because of the small points difference, if they'd had a draw, then we could have actually drawn on game points and win-loss points.
Yeah.
And had no way of doing countback.
Strength of schedule was the only one I could come up with on the day.
Yeah. I was going with, you know what, if you get exactly the same number of win-loss and exactly the same number of game points, they both deserve to win.
I didn't have 2 sets of, the medals were first and second. So.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. We could have got another one.
And then third place was a team that has been a team now for a little while. They play as a group of friends who've decided to officially become a 40k team, which is the Toy Soldier Cartel, or the TSC as we refer to them, because Toy Soldier Cartel is a mouthful. So, Courtney, Alan, Rory, Jaden, Steve, and who have I forgotten? Travis. Sorry, Travis. Came along and did very well. They won their first round, which was a really hotly contested round with the Purple Cobras, who did really well last year.
Oh, actually, there were a few kind of thoughts with, how's this going to go between the...
The Cobras and the TSC was always going to be around to watch for round 1, which was a really tough one to start the day with. So props to the TSC and also to their opponents, the Purple Cobras, for dueling that one out so closely. I think the event ran, from a player's point of view, it ran really well. I think everyone had a good day. I've had a few messages, private ones from people over East and internationally who saw the event and followed some photos and watched the videos and stuff that we posted on the day that said it looked like it went really well. Only a couple of minor hiccups from an organiser's point of view. But I think everyone had a good day, hopefully.
I hope everyone had a good day. That's why we do it. If people aren't enjoying it, we need to stop.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But
no, from my perspective, it all seemed to go really quite smoothly. I stuffed up scoring for 1 round, which was not brilliant. And so one of the things, we collected quite a bit of data, or asked the teams to collect some data. It was impossible for me to police whether or not people were actually completing that. So between rounds, I had 15 minutes to get the score sheets back from the captains, enter all of the information, and then generate the next round matchup. 15 minutes sounds like a decent amount of time when you've only got 10 sets of results to enter. But when you have to wait for those games...
20 sets of results to enter because there were 20 teams.
Yeah, but there's only 10 because those 2
10
teams...
10 sheets.
10 sheets, those 2 teams played each other. You've got to wait for the games to finish. You've got to wait for the team captains to collate the information and get it to me. So for some of those rounds, I had 1 or 2 minutes to finish getting that in to be able to then press the button and announce the next round. So in those kinds of situations, it really is impossible to go... there's a column here that you haven't filled out. I need you to take this away and fill this in before I can... that's just not realistic. We wanted to collect as much data as possible, but if people didn't fill it in, there's not really much that we could do about that on the day.
No, I think for a single-player event, it'd be easier and harder in some ways because...
Yeah, certainly when you're trying to collate 120 individual scores... that becomes a lot more labour-intensive, except for the point that we could then go back to using Best Coast pairings.
Yeah, and BCP does lift a lot of that manual labour off of us for the majority of the day.
Yeah, and if we'd been using Best Coast pairings, I wouldn't have had to worry about the fact that I pressed the wrong button to generate the matchups for round 3.
We've also got a couple of other options, which we'll share with you in the future about how we might be able to record that data without, massive labour-intensive. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So... look, overall, I think the event went really well. It's the 3rd annual one. I know there's some teams on the East Coast that were keen to come over for 2019 and play. The format will stay pretty close to the same, I suspect.
Yeah.
We might modify the times a little bit or, muck about with it a little bit, but...
if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. I mean, the only other one that we were considering was a 2-day version of it.
You were considering that.
Well,
I wasn't.
Because we had the possibility of having more than one team... end up on a 4-win scenario. It was completely possible. going to a 5-round tournament over 2 days with 3 on day 1, 2 on day 2 would allow us to have a definitive winner at the end of 5 games. It would give us the opportunity to make the days both more relaxed with longer playing times, so that we could actually do 2.5 or 2 3/4 hour games to make sure that we did finish them. We'd not be in any rush for pack up at the end of the day. There are multiple bonuses for going to a 2-day tournament. The problem is we don't know the players would be happy to do a 2-day tournament.
Yeah, that's it.
So what do you think? Would you like a 2-day version of the WATC? Could you come for 2 days? Does it impact work or family, or at what point does it become impossible to do because 2 days is just not okay, or do you have commitments that you can't break? So do you prefer 1-day tournaments? Do you prefer 2-day tournaments? Let us know. It's always something that we can consider. So WATC has grown to a point where we can't really accommodate any more players, but we can obviously look at the format and how we manage it over the 1 or 2 days as we get feedback from you guys. So let us know. But I think we might wrap up the WATC wrap up here. If you haven't checked them out, there are 3 posts on the website. The photo reel's got a bunch of photos that were taken on the day by Emma. If you took any photos as a player on the day, please feel free to share them on the WATC event page or just onto the OBSEC page, or you can email them to us, obsec@optusnet.com.au, and we'll share those out into the community as well. We love seeing photos of players' armies in play on the day.
Yeah.
We've also got a few army spotlights that we're going to publish very shortly with photos from some of the lists on the weekend. I know a pure Harlequin army. We're going to get Matt Aird's Star Wars themed Imperial Guard army up there. There's a lot of green stuff work going into that army. It's all based off the Forge World Death Corps of Krieg models. So a lot of people think they're third party, but they're all genuine Forge World. So it's a really cool army to take a look at. I think there's only 2 models that aren't genuine Games Workshop.
And they're still WYSIWYG though.
Yeah. One of them is Darth Vader as Saint Celestine, and when he first used it, I said to him, look, it really needs to be floating up in the air like Celestine is. So he went and bought Celestine and just used the tassels to get Vader flying through the air at the right height. And his Ogre and Bodyguard is a Wookiee. And the Wookiee is still holding the correct storm slab shield and maul that the Ogrins have. He's the right size on the right base. So other than that, though, it's all converted 40k stuff, which is great to see. We've also got Jason Chow's beautiful golden yellow Eandan Eldar, and
I think I've got a couple of photos of Jason's army in the photo reel from the event.
Probably. And then the last one we've asked for is a photo of the Gretchen.
I've definitely got photos of that on the photo reel.
Harry's 320 Gretchen army.
Yeah, so I actually put out to the players before on the Facebook Live that we did before the event, just saying, hey, look, if there's something cool that's happening on your table, just call me over so that I can get a photo of it, because there's obviously a lot of tables and I want to get as much cool stuff as we can. And so Steve called me over and goes, hey, if you've got a minute, this might be a cool photo to get 320 Gretchen versus 16
Adeptus Custodes.
Yeah,
it's it was literally the Battle of Thermopylae with the Spartans versus the Persian hordes, and Steve won it. The Custodes won that game.
Yeah,
and he killed a lot of Gretchen by all accounts. So yeah, look, if you've got any other photos to share them. If you want to see any of them, head over to the website. We've got a wrap-up. We've got a pre-event wrap-up, a wrap-up, and then a photo reel.
Because I'm quite long-winded, I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah,
and
so it becomes 3 posts.
I start typing and think, I'll try and write 500 words, and then I've got 5,000 words and think, oh, that's a bit long even for me.
Yeah. So go and check out the coverage, and we look forward to seeing you next year for the 2019 WATC. Hopefully we'll have some interstate teams making the trip. If you're listening to us anywhere in the world, you are more than welcome to get in touch. And if you want to drag some friends over from the UK or from the US or any part of the world,
Show is a great time to come, but if not...
Come and say hello at Show in September, and then come back again 6 months or 9 months later for WATC.
WA is a beautiful place to visit. It's a great excuse for a holiday.
Well, given that we are technically in the tail end of autumn at this point in time, and we're still getting 23, 24 degree days, beautiful sunshine.
We're at the beach.
Yeah,
so days ago, so yeah.
Come out in and play it.
Saying that, WATC,
it was pouring with rain for the morning.
6 o'clock in the morning we got there. It's belting down with rain. There was thunder and lightning, massive thunderstorm, lightning storm as we're trying to empty the trailers and trucks.
Yeah, it was fine for most of the day.
Yeah, we were inside. It was lashing down, but what better way to spend a rainy day but inside?
Yeah, playing toy soldiers.
20 people playing toy soldiers.
Yeah. So we'll be back in a second just to wrap up the episode. Well, I have no idea how long this episode's going to be as I say this, because I'm going to be editing a lot with children and background noise and all sorts. So
one of our children, our youngest, came up to me midway through and she goes, "Excuse me, Mummy, I don't want to interrupt your recording. Could you stop talking while I flush the toilet?"
So we'll spare you that in the editing process. But, it's interesting recording this. We normally try and record it while the kids are at school or at night when they're all in bed. And this turned out to be an interesting exercise where recording an hour podcast might have taken closer to 2 hours, and then I've still got to edit it, which is going to be a longer process as well. So
because there's so many interruptions.
Yeah. Between the dogs and the phone and everything else, it's been an interesting day recording.
Yeah.
So, look, we hope you've, I suppose, taken some interesting information away from WATC. We'll probably make a chunk of this data public, obviously with names removed, to keep everyone's privacy intact. But there's certainly a bunch of information there that we've gathered for future events, and we hope that you guys have enjoyed some of the interesting stuff that's happened. And if you want to learn more about it, then go and check out Emma's posts on the website objectivesecure.com.au, and you can find links on Facebook and Twitter to those posts as well if you're socially media inclined.
And you've also made some changes to Twitter. So somehow Twitter had changed itself so that nothing was able to be retweeted. So you've now made some changes so make things slightly more easily accessible, haven't you?
The virus scanner that we have decided that Twitter was too much of a liability and a risk, and so set all the settings to private. So I've since adjusted those, and you should be able to now find us on Twitter, not a problem. But, that's technology. It's what you do.
Yep.
We're going to try and get a game recorded at some point in the next couple of days and get that on YouTube as soon as possible. And we're going to be live again next Wednesday night on the Facebook page. We're also going to be recording some videos in regards to this cool colour shift paint and some of the stencil stuff. We might even do some stuff live on Facebook as well later on tonight as I start dabbling with it. So, keep up to date with everything Objective Secured on the usual spots. And until next time, I'm Michael.
I'm still Emma.
I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you again soon. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Objective Secured podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can visit our website, objectivesecured.com.au. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Objective Secured, or you can email us, obsec@optusnet.com.au. Thanks for listening.